Another aliens. Oh, they won't. But they won't be able to hear you, so I'll sound like a schizo on my side, and you'll sound like a schizo on your side. But we got it all up. Lewis fully alone. Thank you. Thank you, Lewis. Lewis, with the clutch of a lifetime to clear up any misunderstandings, has just resolved the situation. He said reserves are allowed to drive in tier 1 and tier 2. Because I mean, if you're a tier 2 driver, right, and you earned the spot to become a reserve spot for a driver, I mean, that allows you like to grant access into tier 1 if you don't get like a full drive, right? Cuz some teams still have they're like packed to the brim. And like some drivers may be under threat of losing a seat in tier 1 if they don't perform well in the preseason. So, yeah, you probably should actually. Actually, let me. You got me your Twitch, right? You did. All right. Paste media links. Uh, Let me get your Twitch involved in the announcement real quick. It's like the tier 2 announcement. You mind saying that louder? Yeah. It's absolutely double the retardedness, and that's what makes it so beautiful, actually. Because if you can't have one dumb brain, you need two dumb brains. That's how you get around. Right. We got Mark watching in too. We got the whole Red Bull family to pew into this race. I hope your stream gets more viewers because your commentary is way more hilarious than mine. So far, all the people have heard is me coughing along. That's fair. Oh, that's fair. Mhm. They go around that corner, this corner. Yeah, I can. Okay, that makes sense. I mean, no, I mean, I don't even blame you. That's how I am sometimes. I need someone else to pipe in and get like the real words in that I can't. Sometimes I lack. By the way, I just want to let you know I'm gonna be randomly raided. Okay, in like my room, I'm gonna get like some canes, right? Some delicious canes, uh, and my yeah, I'm gonna get like FBI open up the door for my parents. They're gonna like bust it down open. They're gonna be like, "We got your food." Dude, oh my gosh, that sauce, I despise it. Everyone loves it. I despise it. I'm not. Yeah. It's all good. It's it's good, but like people are excessive on it. People like drink it. Have you seen that? Have you seen people drink it? It's disgusting. Hmm. Oh. Dude, honestly, it concerns me how people can do that with such like will, such ease, and not like think twice about it. I'd be like having a heart attack. Yeah. With 20 drivers actually going into tier 2 though, it's quite a shock that we only have 6 of them showing up to the first race. We're gonna see blood and murder on track. Notes. Real? Honestly, I don't, that is genius. Maybe I should have startups like for these Twitch. Oh, someone's going out. I can't tell which car that was. It looked like. Is it? Okay. It's the house of Damien Ramirez. Now, he is, I believe, originally a used to be tier 1 driver, right? Who was seen. Yeah, that's true. Big move changes going on for Tier 1, actually, for the Haas seats. They got a new TP, actually, that makes them independent from the Ferrari TP driver, not driver, the TP host of the Ferrari engines, Sinzeka. So I think that really takes a huge moment and swing for the Haas family overall, because they got a new leader in charge. He seems like he's ready to take control. His name's Chunder, and he came in, got 2 good names off the bat. I think he could bring a challenge with Haas again, like they used to be in 23, in season 1 of IRL. Oh, Shining Swarm. Yeah, Shining. Shining has an interesting story. Mm-hmm. To unleash fury on the tier 1. I've seen beautiful drives. Yeah, Squirt, I've seen Squirt like maybe once or twice through the race season. He just freshly popped in. He wasn't much of a name. Uh, besides the racing. Golden though. This golden fella. He got a P7 in Vegas, yeah. Right. Oh, more traffic coming out onto the track. A Red Bull going out right when the Haas is on his lap. I don't know if that Alpine actually of Deathly Venom is out on his lap yet. But speaking of Alpine, I did hear they got a TP just like how Sauber did, like you mentioned. And actually, I think the story was Shining Swarm got a promotion. Actually, he went as the old Haas TP to into the Kick Sauber team with the beautiful drivers of Squirt and Golden Sniper, like someone in my commentary box just said. They want to prove themselves. They definitely want to go heavy momentum. Okay, I can see tier one being in threat. Damien, a beautiful racer with a wonderful pole. I saw Dan, huge. There's gonna be definitely some huge plays here. Preseasons for many drivers to make a name. You know, obviously a lot of people in tier two, I think they have the pace, but I think they cause more of a wrecking scene more than ever. I think we saw that hugely, sadly, with one of the Astons. Not Pro Ultra, but it was uh, it was GDB. He in Portugal, I think there was a huge wreck he had going on to one of the hills with Lewis, the Mercedes driver. Oh man, it was brutal. A hit, both cars off into the grass. It was a nightmare. But like little mistakes like those are gonna get you called out, caught, and probably losing a seat for tier one, especially with how high the competition's grown. Yeah, Alpine. I can. That's fair. That'd be interesting. Drizzo though actually goes into the pits. A Damien Poole. Sparky top three. You can actually see Dan going off the track, though, bailing out of his lap. He currently was. He was going actually a little faster by the seams of it. Getting out of the way for the Alpine of Deathly Venom, who is going on the fly right now. Seems to be carrying the pace. TTV, though, he wants to prove that he's also just as quick and sets up a time like just nearly 0.1 hundredths off of Damien. But actually, Deathly Venom going into the pits just like a Drizzo did, not what you want to see, especially with the fact that your time's a little off, it's not right where you want it to be, but still as a tier 2, it shouldn't be that discouraging. I think right now, I think many of these drivers need to find a pace, a little momentum, and this tier, this whole preseason, it's going to get them all situated. Yeah. That's very true. The quickest time by far. Got a new fresh of rubber out, if I believe. It looks clean. It looks like it's ready to tear up and go through the tarmac. You have fond memories of 9 and 10. TTV in the pits. Deathly Venom going out of the pits, though. And what you can see is Drizzo's also on the outlap. But what I do want to watch is how Damien's going to hold up on this this lap. He's warming his tires up right now. Look at the Ferrari. He's holding close onto the right-hand side wall right there, getting right next to the people holding out the board, telling him what lap it is. He's doing everything he can to take some lines I've not quite see other drivers quite take in a sense here. With the Sector 1, it's going to be a telling sign. We're going to see how fast he is compared to other racers. A 28.687. How about we run that over in the race director real quick? See where that lines him up right with Damien. A 28.2. And we have Drizzo, who's still, of course, trying to set a lap. Finds himself with a 28.6. He's 0.4. I don't know why he necessarily went closer to the barrier wall on the right-hand side there. He is killing it in the second sector, though. He's with his lines, it's always gonna be different. But I think right here, he's proven towards us. It doesn't matter. I still have the pace regardless. Just proved it right there in second sector. You can't deny it. Even if it's not there in first sector, you want to see what time he could put up for a challenge that is going to find himself right behind Dan and somewhat in the middle between Venom and kind of a safe spot for him. This is a new face we haven't quite seen. He's making a name for himself. He seems happy to get behind the wheel. I'm excited. This means there could be possible battles between maybe Drizzo and Dan, by the looks of it. Oh boy. That's one you could hold. I say that Drizzo did wonderful, but I'm watching right now Dan, what seems to be like on a killer lap, and is gaining excessively on the Ferrari up ahead. I don't know if he was getting out of the slipstream there just so he could avoid the amount of speed he would have through the corners. But what you did see was that he had like insane pace to actually get the second. He is killing it. The Ferrari almost in the way right there. Dan not happy with that. He places it. Wonderful time. I guarantee you he is not happy though with the move the Ferrari did right ahead of him. He's probably a little questioning why that Ferrari took so long to actually get out of the way on that third sector straight away. Especially if you're going into the pits. Yeah. Yeah. Getting off track could always be a dangerous game. Yeah. I mean, with all races come experience. I think a huge rookie mistake, but it doesn't deny the fact that Drizzo still had pace there. I mean, he's splitting the difference between Venom and TTV right now by the seams of it. Yeah, I think this is gonna shake up the whole grid. You don't know who's gonna have the real race pace here. I think we could have a possible wreck. I mean, it's very possible. These are new drivers. They're all ready to punch and drive and get through the crowd, and we're gonna watch what could potentially be the top three having more of a battle, and the back and middle packs really develop a story. Maybe you see some people progress, make a name for themselves, and become parts of the top pack if they extend their practices and really get through every weekend with that kind of motivation. Yeah. Oh wow. You're right. Yeah. That was a long time ago. The lights about to go out. The Ferrari getting a wonderful start. All the cars going crazy. Lots of lag going out for Sparky in the back. TTV losing spots. I think Sparky is suffering an internet issue as he's in the back, unable to catch up. He lost so many places from that. And in fact, speaking of loss of places, you have TTV, who started from P2, by the way, losing out on the start of the line completely. I could definitely see the pace. Damien keeping that pace up, definitely proving to any tier 1 spots that he deserves a possible seat. Keeping that almost 1 second gap possible, but Dan not allowing it. Trying to gain back onto it. I think TTV here, it's going to be a recovery race though. He is gaining. This is Dan closing in. Getting his nose almost in there. Damien not closing the door completely carefully. Dan, though, with the fact DRS is now open, is going on the outside, carrying the speed as he goes past the Haas. Now the pressure is applied. Rizzo now in the battle. Damien thinking of a move, but thinking better of it. Remember, the sprint is what matters right here for the placement of the race, and it's extensive points too. So it gives these people that kind of energy and that motivation that this is it. This is what they're fighting for. And if they could carry this kind of energy into the race weekends when we're out of preseason, they're going to be exhilarated. They're going to be pumped and ready to prove they're a champion. Damien locking up hard there. Drizzo now having the run on the Haas of Damien with DRS, but Damien probably burning ERS to get away right there, is now on Dan. It's a DRS attack for Dan. Dan getting overswarmed by what seems to be the Ferrari, who gets his nose in, almost nudges him off track completely, but they keep it too wide completely throughout the whole way extensively, and this keeps Deathly Venom in bay. That is very true. TTV having a spin of some sort. What was that? I'd love to get more into that. What I did see, though, is Drizzo made an attempt on Dan. That is not what TTV wants. That's what I'm thinking. I think... Dan, though, he's going to have the Ferrari of Drizzo on the back of him onto this DRS straight. It doesn't matter if he has DRS of his own. He's trying to get away, carrying that same line that Damien's holding to hold that speed, brush away all the speed that could possibly given as a slipstream for the drivers behind. Wonderful driving right there. And better yet, I want to add on to the fact that right here, before this straightaway, the Ferrari was thinking of a move through the chicanes, but thought better of it at the start of second sector through these parts. I forgot exactly. I don't think they have quite names, but this corner right here, you did see it again. The Ferrari, who's been thinking about making that move, a little ruckus from him, a little grievous, but you know, I don't think it takes out the possibility the Ferrari has the room. He tries to make it happen. It's one of the weakest points of all corners to get attacked on. But I don't think this is really helping out the two drivers who are losing out to Damien. The Red Bull and Ferrari are just losing time. This does get Deathly back into it, but he does tap the rear of Drizzo. Oh, getting ever so loose, hitting the cone and almost spinning out. But speaking of issues and spinning out, it is TTV back again in second sector, almost rejoining unsafely. In fact, he does, getting the driver of Spark all mixed up. That is a very dangerous situation. TTV carrying more speed than the slower driver of Spark right there. The Ferrari of Drizzo, who messes up and gets a little tap, I believe, at the end of the Red Bull, carrying more speed through the entry, gets himself all messed up, and in fact, nearly spins himself out. Another spin. Oh! And that's Venom! Venom. I believe that was from the initial racing battle between the Ferrari and Red Bull, who were both going too wide through the corks, through the hairpin, and getting it all wrong. TTV though, he's gonna retire the track on. He's gonna retire the car on track. That's not what you want. And what you also don't want is Deathly Venom, who's spun out once again. And there's a huge wreck involving the Ferrari and Red Bull. The Red Bull getting squeezed out, but what looks like both of them just clashing with each other, going onto that corner, onto the straightaway. Huge. Wing damage. Damien. Damien holding his name true. First preseason win. I think that's huge for Damien right there. I do think what we do have to address is what in the world happened there at the final corner. I'd love a better look at that because Dan and Drizzo, that got them all twisted. TTV, who seems to be retiring from the whole race session itself by the seams of it, maybe he has extensive damage to that car or his Wi-Fi that he might not be able to continue into the next session. This was definitely interesting, I would say, qualifying for the sprint and race for the sprint. And now we're going to go into the actual qualifying for the big race. I think this is where we're going to watch maybe a few more situations break down, maybe more conflict when it comes to qualifying again. Maybe the Ferrari gets in the way once more, but what again, like I don't know though, because the Ferrari, it's very interesting. I don't know how that situation broke down. I think we're gonna need a breakdown on the clips, and maybe that might go into the steward room. Even as a preseason situation, I think it's important to address the situations that we see on track. But that's of course. Tier 2 is run by different stewards, so in all aspects, that's how they handle it. 47 jobs, and this is one of them. The child support's real. TTV though, he does come in, explaining that his tires were falling off. With some new news, speaking over the qualifying. We are currently watching Drizzo though on the lap, for his current qualifying to see what he can manage. Yeah. I think the biggest person that surprised me the most would would have been TTV. I think he did wonderful. He's a new person. He just came in. He lines up with someone that was in tier one, Damien, who I think deserves a tier one spot for what we've seen already. It's been beautiful. Uh, but then you look at Drizzo, and he gets the better starter, and I think you saw TTV lack in that race start. It reminds me of Norris when he used to race, right? And I think that was a huge issue right there. And the slip ups because of the tire wear, I think maybe he might need to manage the tires better. Maybe there was a situation where it just went all wrong. I don't know, but I think he needs to execute a better race strategy. If I were to say who impressed me the most, I would definitely have to give it to Dan. Even with the huge conflict with the Ferrari, he brought that car back over the line since P3. With the huge wreck, I that could have possibly been Dan that got the P2. I mean, I just can't tell. Uh, but This is always preseason. Conflicts that arise here, I've seen them carry out into seasons. As a tier one racer myself, back in season one, I remember back in my day, I remember there was crazy things I saw in preseason. But that's always what comes with the racing. You're always gonna see chaos. You're always gonna see something crazy, especially with all the new raw talent that comes in. I think it's difficult to pick out where you're gonna see these flaws really shine, or where you're gonna see someone actually go over all these expectations and deliver a wonderful race. I real Rizzo getting his first lap in now. That is a wonderful improvement. But what you see again is a spawn out. TTV with wing damage as well. With that spin, he got himself heavy wing damage on that right hand side. He did seem to have the fast first sector, but I think he just lost control. That's not what he wants. The one tier two. I uh I don't know. It it really does. It's a huge demotivator. Exactly. I think you shouldn't beat yourself up too hard over them. Speaking of pushing, there's Dan with the fastest first sector by the brinks of it, and it looks like Sparky is actually right behind. They're doing a little beautiful teamwork right there for possibly Slipstream. Hopefully, Spark doesn't lose out on this, and it doesn't come into dirty air, because then that could totally ruin Sparky's lap. That could ruin him through a few corners. The absolute destruction of Mark leaving Sniper, bringing the tears in, and bringing tears indeed is Dan with the fastest second sector. Of course, Damien isn't on the track yet. He's still in the pits, but that's something to put a punch out there on the track. With the fastest. 131. That is not what that's not what Spark wants. You gotta steal the calf rages. I think that really paints a picture right now in the Red Bull garage. Uh, Dan looks like he has that motivation. Not motivation. I think every driver comes in here with motivation. I feel like I use that word poorly. Sparky. Dan, who's invalidated his lap. I don't. They could have been going slow. That could be a huge situation. Dan has low fuel? Dan running the car. Dan running the fuel down, cutting a bit of the track. and he's having to go into the pits. But what you do see is Damien, who's warming his tires up to go for his lap. That's not what Dan really wants. I think he might have wanted a little bit of extra fuel in the tank. Yeah, but what you do see is some yellows in the second sector as a Ferrari goes flying through. I wonder if there was any confusion over there in second sector and if the Ferrari almost got a crash because you can see it. The Ferrari bails out of the lap right there in second sector in the minimap. Not what he needs. Fast first sector though. Picked up from Damien. Damien really trying to prove a point here. I think the Haas garage is going to be really happy. They got two strong drivers that they feel pretty confident going into Tier 1. And then Tier 2, they have someone by the name Damian Ramirez. Someone who drove once before in Tier 1. Here once again for Tier 2. And he has the pace to really prove to maybe Aston or VCarb with two teams that have no TPs that are under the control of Dan, I believe, at the current moment. You can always see a driver swap. I think Atspinall, the Alpine driver, has been one of the strongest ones out of the two. Nuxtra, I think I've seen some troubles in recent race performances today. I hope that doesn't carry out into the preseason, but... Whoa! Whoa. Familiar faces, familiar pace. Damien, he's carrying that board hard. He's got the pace to knock everyone back right here. I'm hoping when we go into... I think... Tier 1 racers under threat right now. Dan actually, Inhumane Dan, was once, for a while, the Ferrari and McLaren TP for Tier 1 before he decided to take a step into the Red Bull family to be reserves for Season 2 before, at the end of his stint, now finding himself in a Tier 2 drive. And I think if he could bring some more pace like Damien can, he could find himself in a potential Tier 1 spot under a team name, like VCarb, a sister team. I think it could be very impactful for that cooperative teamwork. We've seen it hugely in the Red Bull family. That's how they sealed the Season 2 constructors so well. They drove well with their two drivers. If they could get the reserve driver in a full-time seat, I think you could see VCarb bring out some potential that they've been lacking. But at the same time, you don't want to undermine people. Like Max, I think he carried a lot of points heavily through the first half of the season, and then Souls carried midway and through because I believe he made his approach that way. I believe he joined in Austria in Season 2, if I'm correct. But he made a name. He knew what he was doing, and it's interesting too because initially he was going in for the McLaren seat with Renato before he got the drive back into VCarb. He re-signed with his contracts. He got into a secret contract between the Red Bull family once again. The McLaren home, it's strong, but there's a lot of pressure. Sure. Mercedes. That is a good time ago. I red, Scarlet Red. I think early. With the prancing horse going through the line, he doesn't go any better than his previous time. In fact, he's slower behind Dan on the start of this qualifying. Dan really here to actually say, you know, Drizzo, you got me on the race in the sprint, but I'm going to get you here in the qualifying right now. The race gives you more points. Qualifying matters a lot. What matters the most is start off that line. We saw it once before with TTV. It ruined him. That confidence dropped. You got to go into these corners. Murphy's Law, indeed. If you don't go into these corners with the confidence, with the idea of how you know your car handles through the corners with the weight it does have, then you're not going to ever understand how to carry that pace to its full momentum. And that's where it could really screw with you and mess you up. But speaking of messing up, I guess previously on the last lap, Drizzo messed up in second sector, but right now he's not messing up. He's going faster in second sector, bringing the challenge maybe back to Dan. You never know, but we're going to watch as he crosses the line. And he gets himself. That is what he wants to see. Dan's still in the garage. 2 minutes and 50 seconds left. I think Dan has huge momentum to maybe steal that back. Maybe he wants to keep the tires for the race. 25% going into it. It's really going to shake up a lot of things and see where actual strategy comes into play and where you're going to see some of these things come down to. And Deathly Venom actually retires in the pits. Uh, Interesting move from Deathly. Yeah, I would always want to go for an extra lap. I was always the type of person to always just go for an extra lap just because I could. I think Deathly going out now, I mean, that's his choice. It's very understandable. Maybe he wants an extra safe pair. But I always love to get that extra knowledge on the track and really burn the tires. So just in case there was a pit stop, those worn in tires got adjusted to the temperatures quickly. A lot better. Of course, you would have less laps, but at the same time, if you had a safety car, technically you're trying to preserve the car tire under the few laps you have. I think Venom, though, he's playing it smart. I think he fears TTV Scent God is gonna maybe have another mishap. We saw it before in the sprint. Maybe it happens here. But what's not happening, he is absolutely killing it. He's proving me wrong with the fastest middle sector. He's here to prove everyone wrong, telling everyone to eat the leftover dust. But what you see right now is going to be the lap time he sets up to put himself in P2. What he likes to see ahead of Drizzo and ahead of Dan. Dan, who finds himself on the outlap. You gotta give it where you gotta give it. Damien, who's also on another lap actually, as Dan's about to start his. Damien, who's probably hoping to get one last lap in. Interesting move. Wonder if he has the time with 20 seconds on the clock. But what you see happening is Inhumane Dan ready to start his lap. Damien. TTV might be going slower, but what you do see is Dan, who's on the flyer. He's the one to bring the pace. He's the one that goes off track right now. He was the only one to bring a battle. I wonder if he's going to lose the time that he had that could have promised him possibly a P3 start. With Inhumane Dan just shortly losing a little bit of time. He has one last corner. This is the final corner to break it all. He's got to prove himself in this corner to get the time he lost. He's going into the pits. He bails. That's Dan putting the car up. I think the Hasses are going to be going absolutely nuts. This is what they want to see. The one fear is, will they lose their tier 2 driver Damien if he might have a tier 1 seat up for grabs? Damien really proving it. You're absolutely wrecked if this guy is older than you. Because then the kiddo absolutely in not your favor. Ready for this grid to start up though. We see everyone who seems prepared for this. It is straight up lights. And there you see there you are. And there the lights go out. Dan gets the better start. And then the Ferrari gets in the back of the Haas there. Not what he wants there. That Ferrari trying to pull away as the Red Bull now gains. And the driver of TTV set in the wall. Huge. And he has to reset to track. In the rulebook, resetting the track is seen as a 5-second penalty. I think at this point, I think that is purely off the slate though. After what you saw, he was beached. He was able to bring that car back on with no one behind. There's no way he would get a 5-second penalty. But what you do see is the battle clashing up in the front, which involves the driver of Drizzo and Damien. The Red Bull getting the pressure onto Damien now. They want to keep Damien with him. They don't want Damien to get away. Red Bull wants him to stick with him. And Drizzo wants to keep him behind. Damien getting a little loose at the end there. But that's also a huge demotivation for the V-Carb family right there. Another huge incident. Just not what you want to see. TTV having to get back on the track the only way he could. Absolutely brutal. He's putting it up into the pits. Speaking of shredding tires right now, what you can see is the driver of Damien losing out on his soft tires a little bit on that grip he has. He's getting a little loose through the exits, but what you do notice is Damien, he's not fully close to that Ferrari as much as he wishes. I think this is the long game for Damien. With 14 laps, I could see the medium softs coming in way better. The tire grip would go down further, but what you do see is the Haas getting a little all messed up through the corner, just trying to slow down more than the Ferrari did. Drizzo getting the fastest time, but you're going to see the Haas get the DRS, go aside, go for the move, and he's going 2-on-2 with the Ferrari through the corners. The Ferrari getting it all done wrong into the curbs, getting it all loose, losing some major time. That gets the Red Bull of Dan in for it. They're going to go for a three-way battle, and what you're going to see is the defense from the Haas. This is for the points right here. Drizzo making some controversy once before in the preseason sprint. Is he going to find himself in another issue? Possibly. As he gets the car all wrong. He's off the track. He seems like he's gaining an advantage, but he doesn't fully. The Red Bull almost getting a run, but now you see the Ferrari once off again. It's 3 wide. Dan going through. Dan's going to want to wait for the DRS zone to get through this Ferrari. There's no way he's going to want to make the move now. It's too dangerous. The Ferrari, who's been losing out and is once again off the track. And there, you can see Damien with DRS. Damien, who's going to go for the move. He's going to give a weird line, and that's going to be awkward for the Red Bull. And there's contact, in fact, just a tiny bit, as you see the Ferrari behind gain on it, and the Haas right up ahead, getting a little loose, almost getting it all done wrong, as there's another move done by the Red Bull, getting it all right, and everything's going good. Nothing's going wrong, except for the Ferrari of Drizzo. Drizzo losing out, not feeling that pace that he initially had. That's not what he needs here. Dan, though, who wants to see himself possibly winning the first race, though, this could be huge for him. Damien, proving it once before, he could prove it again. You can see the Ferrari of Drizzo actually losing out now. Not as much as the top two would wish for. And then the Ferrari tapping the back of the Haas. Oh man, that was absolutely terrifying, and that makes the Haas lose out to Dan almost completely on all that time he could have gained for the slipstream and a possible move he could have made on the long straightaway. Sector 1 could have been a wonderful move for Damien if he didn't get rear-ended by Drizzo right there. But what you do see is that Damien's going to have another run on the second DRS straight, and he gets the move done, and the Red Bull gets the switchback beautifully. They are dancing around the Bahrain track right now as Damien's losing out through a few of these corners. That's getting Drizzo back onto him. I think Drizzo's going to be out of the question though, with his soft tires feeling that pressure. Lap by lap, you can see Drizzo struggling. Lap by lap, you can see Drizzo losing that pace. The mediums now coming into play way better than the softs. I think he's losing out way more than he wished for. And the move for the defensive line on the outside, possibly getting out of the way. A little lockup from the Haas, but what you're going to see is a wonderful comeback and a possible re-return of the Red Bull going side by side with the Haas. They're going to go two ways through the corner and they collide. Oh! That is a really hard one to tell. The Haas, though, he's defending from the Ferrari of Drizzo now, feeling some pressure because of how the Ferrari drives overall, but losing the car. And Venom DNFing on track. And the Haas almost coming back onto the line dangerously in front of Dan in his way, because the lines are all mixed up with how it's going. And there you can see a little mix-up on the exit for the entry and exit for the Ferrari and Haas. That's not what they want. This is terrible. If I was driving right now, I'd be easing on the gas a little bit better for a stronger exit. The contact is real. And what's also real is Deathly Venom leaving the paddock. He's going out. Speaking of Dan, who also gets the move on Ferrari. The top three bringing another sense of domination onto this race day, as the teammate of Spark can be seen in the background. This is not the day for Sparky. I hope we can see something stronger from Spark. If not, I think Spark is still being a wonderful team player to even attend to the preseason, make his presence known, and show that he is a huge member to that Red Bull family. You would be really proud. But on the back of Damien, you can see the driver of Dan catching up on him. Drizzo, who's been making mistakes through the corners and a little over-aggressive, somehow still keeping with, but not getting into a dangerous amount of contact, though he's a little frisky on the brakes. It makes you wonder if you're going to see another lockup and another hit from the Ferrari into that first sector at the end of third sector. The Haas is going into the pits early, and the Ferrari is joining with. Not what Drizzo wants. Drizzo finding himself. If Spark stays out and defends against Damien, there's a huge chance, or if there's a battle between Damien and Drizzo, there's a huge chance that Dan could maybe pull away with this strategy if he's going to go onto the softs, extending the mediums. And what you can see is Damien on the softs. That is true. The soft's been burning up, and Drizzo could possibly find himself with the tire advantage now, actually, if we look at it. really depends on how much pace that Damien can pull away, and I think he's pulling away enough on the Ferrari driver on those fresh softs. I think Drizzo's now out of the DRS. That's putting Drizzo into danger, and Damien is just hoping to pile that movement and get maybe the early cut onto Dan, but Dan sticks it out for another lap. Interesting talks in the Red Bull garage. And a 10-second penalty for Spark going into the pits, not slowing down in time. But what you do notice is you're going to want to hope that Dan slows down in time, especially with how long he's been on these tires. Those tires are going to be worn in. He's going to have to make sure he hits that braking point correctly and doesn't lock up. That is for a fact. I think right now Red Bull are going to be a little questioned with what their initial strategy was going into this race weekend preseason with, let's introduce ourselves, how are we going to do the strategy, and they executed really strongly until they had a huge moment with Drizzo, but now Dan is sticking it out on the old medium, starting to struggle with the grip now. It's more noticeable, and I mean, sticking him out that long, it's definitely going to start doing damage to the tires. He's going to be crying for those softs. He's going to be wondering why they didn't call him earlier. I think that was because of Spark, but you never know. I think the double pit would have worked. Doesn't get a 10-second penalty, makes it in time. He's going to be right at the start right there, getting his tires switched. It's a long pit straight away, and that's not what Dan wants. He might get overtaken right here, and in fact, he does. The Ferrari. I think that was a poor call-in. Poor call-in for the Red Bulls. I think they could have executed that a lot stronger. More importantly, I think this does give him the tire advantage, though. I think this does give Dan that confidence. Drizzo, who also faces the penalty, too. Damien, who's carrying this to a possible win right here if he doesn't have any mishaps. What you do see is a mishap from the Ferrari of Drizzo once again through that hairpin in the second sector. Not what he wants entirely. It's been cashing him out before. I think that could be a huge flaw. But what is another huge flaw is how the Ferrari has been driving in the sprint. That could maybe lead to another huge possible flaw or wreck between the Red Bull and Ferrari, because look at Dan fly. He's gaining and possibly could be in for the DRS strike. He might be wanting to hold back because he knows that the Ferrari is going to be a very dangerous move on this braking point. Getting a little wrong there. Both the cars. The softs bringing it through. They're going through. The Red Bull of Dan getting back into the braking line. Is he going to trust that the Ferrari is going to make his braking point? The Ferrari does, but the Ferrari having the DRS for the next straightaway, does he have the actual opportunity to attack back? The Ferrari taking too much speed though. And there, you can see Dan just ever so slightly getting away. That's destroying the confidence of Drizzo right now. He's probably wondering if he was on the wrong strategy and maybe should have started on the mediums and gone to the softs like the others. But speaking of the others, there's been only 4. Out of all the possible 6, we saw TTV having a huge situation into the first corner. And I don't know if Deathly Venom was involved, but what we did notice is that it got TTV, sent by God, stuck in the gravel and having the reset back on track while no one was around, making it a safe rejoin, but then again, making it a bad race for TTV, not only for the quali, but as well for the race. And that's not, as a Red Bull Academy driver, what you want to see. I can understand things out of your control for God over here, but I think he had that pace in the quali. I think that tire grip losing out later and more, I think that's definitely got to do some damage to you. Speaking of damage, you can see Drizzo trying to maintain the amount of pressure he could keep onto Dan by keeping up with him with 2 laps to go. But what you also notice is that Dan is gaining ever so slightly on Damien up ahead. It's not enough that it will be a threat, I think, but it is enough that it puts this sense of worry if Damien makes a mistake, like a big one at that. Dan's right there to snag it. Drizzo. Dan choosing a very unique, closer line right there. I don't think it gives him all the best of the exits, but what you can see is Damien trying to get that slipstream away off of him. He knows that it's going to be a huge issue for him. You can see him going towards the wall to cut it all off, and that's going to help him actually pretty well to keep his pace away from the Red Bull. I can see that in the when it comes down to racing, but when we saw that from TTV God in qualifying, it didn't make all that much sense to me. But what you do see right here is that the Ferrari still in the DRS zone, and 13 out of 14, it's one last moment for Drizzo to possibly make something out of nothing. Eating more curb than he wants to, but he's still keeping and maintaining it, but he's losing that grip through the mid corners you just saw right there. I think that's going to get him out for the DRS play that he wants, but what you can see up ahead is what seems to be a huge lockup for the Haas, maybe. Huge piles of smoke, but it's nothing that is terrible for the pace of the Haas, it seems like. I think what that might have been was for Dan. Because now you can see that Drizzo is so close, and I think this is giving a moment for Drizzo to strike back once again, and you will see the battle extend back once again. But what you do notice is that Dan has the higher battery. This is a game that Dan has been preparing for over the course of the laps, but Drizzo is going to have the flap open for the slipstream and for the DRS that's going to be opening right here. And there, you can see him go too wide. Dan waiting, it seems like, to strike, maybe, knowing that Drizzo has a penalty, maybe, is the reason he's not fighting this as hard. Or maybe he's waiting till they go on to the next straightaway that he could dump his battery and absolutely vanish and disappear. Drizzo feeling the pressure. The Red Bull still on the right-hand side. Is Drizzo going to give the space? And does he feel confident to go in that corner? How he's going it. But he messes up once again. That gives Drizzo onto the exit. That's a little dirty, just once it was before. And losing out because of the DRS and ERS. That's huge. Drizzo having only one moment to strike. Drizzo's going to have to make it on the final corner. He's always been brave in that final corner with how he brakes, so it's going to be sketchy. But what you do notice right here on the straightaway is that Dan's trying to pull away with everything he has. He gets the braking zone done right. He gets through the last corner correctly. He's going to do what Drizzo got in the sprint, get the P2, and this time he's going to do it with no contact as Drizzo lifts off the gas. And there you are for the top 3 for the preseason race. Damien, who's out here making a name for himself as a potential Tier 1 racer. Dan, who's been in the paddocks once before as reserve for Tier 1, has made himself maybe a potential rival with Drizzo. A beautiful drive to that Haas of Damien. And on top of that, you got to give the whole strategy down to Dan right there. I think what he accomplished was very crucial. If Dan was any more... If Dan had any issues on those mediums of any sort, as old as they were getting, or made any mistakes on that fresh pair that he had to catch up with, I think that could have been an issue. But I think what you saw right there was the execution that he aimed for and executed wonderfully. And it really is a bummer, because right here you can see the points that were distributed. If this was a real race, this is preseason, but what you do see is that Damien's blowing it out of the water. He came here, and he's proving to maybe a few teams that he deserves a spot. Tomorrow, we're going to be having Tier 1 going at it in preseason. It's been a while since we've seen these drivers. I think it's going to be exciting. What we saw here... What we saw here, I'll say this for a fact, is definitely what we're going to see in Tier 1 preseason. By a margin of more drivers. Tier 2 gave the action. I think... I would say you're absolutely right on. With Damien and the Haas team, Chunder, I think this is something they wanted to see. This is stuff that's that spark, that light, that really ignited that the idea of what the group was going to be built around. I think this extends that point that, hey, Damien has what it takes to get the points on board, pull away, make a wonderful strategy, and I think you could possibly see him, like I said, gaining a Tier 1 spot. With how crazy Tier 1's going to be tomorrow, I think we're going to see people that either meet our expectations or they don't. And if you don't, you lose a seat. You see it all the time. And we saw it with Daniel Ricciardo. We saw it with countless drivers before. We've seen even just excuses before from like the Torpedo. Wonderful Daniel Kvyat. He was a racer for the Red Bull family. He loses his seat. You know, there's so much history that goes on in F1. There's so much behind the scenes that you never really understand what can happen. I will say this is where we are going to be ending the Tier 2 stream for today, though. Tier 1 is going to be open tomorrow, an hour ahead of this expected stream today. It's going to be seeing a lot of more action-packed filled racing between possibly a bigger grid. I hope to see all of you there. I am Tier 1. This isn't my department, but Tier 2 is still something I'm a part of in all my heart. I have to love how that went down. I love the commentary I did with Golden Sniper, which sadly is not picked up on my stream, but he is on his stream, and you could go watch him yourself. He's been doing wonderful work the whole way throughout, and I wish you all a great one. Take care.